like I was saying earlier, like there's way more like close knitness involved in VRChat because all of the events are readily accessible. So it's way easier to get shows in VRChat, like or just being able to like have the opportunity to play like at the end of the show even, just because there's a lot of stuff going on every single night, and there's always a lot of people that are interested in like hanging out or checking out whoever's playing. So if you want to play in front of a crowd and you really, really want to do that night.
Hello, welcome to Metaverse Degen. I'm Lion. It's just me today. Again, Raptor is working, but we are joined here by a wonderfully esteemed guest. Oh,
Howdy.
howdy. Who are you? What are you known for? And how did you get started in this wonderfully virtual world? Wonderful virtual world. English, I can do that.
I'm KitsuneMixes. I'm a DJ, VJ, and producer in the VRchat scene and in IRL stuff as well. I've been here since about 2022-ish, at least in the DJ scene. I've been playing VRchat since probably 2019, 2020-ish, and I got started well, just like meeting people that were in the scene and being introduced to events and meeting club owners and kind of networking pretty much back in 2022. And I've been here seen or through like hundreds of different clubs and uh sorry, been a while since I've been on like an interview thing, but yeah, I've been here for a long time, been through hundreds of different clubs, and just kind of being friends with people and enjoying the music and having a good time, and it's always worked out really, really well.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for joining us. It means quite a lot you're here.
Mhm.
And what initially pulled you into VR, and how'd you get started with music if you're like producing music and DJing and doing stuff for real life? What are your origins?
Yeah. As far as VR chat goes, I've always been interested in like VR gaming since I was like young and Oculus was in its like early beta test. I watched YouTubers and Twitch streamers pick up the Oculus as it was circulating through the beta test and like playing games like Slenderman and Minecraft, and I was always really interested in like trying it out, never so much like wanting to play VR chat up until probably like 2017ish, whenever I had a few friends that were already like playing VR games, and they got me introduced to like VR chat, like social stuff through desktop mode. And then 2019ish, whenever I started college, I actually picked up my first VR headset. I picked up a Rift S from one of my friends, and that was like instant hook basically. I played a lot of like Beat Saber and the generic like VR games that people usually cycle through, and then I touched VR chat for the first time, and I met a good group of friends that just got me hooked on the game every single weekend, you know. As far as like music production goes, I met a group of friends when I first started playing this game that were all hooked on an artist called Jai Wolf and another artist called Porter Robinson, and they absolutely adored these artists. And we would be in the game every single Friday and Saturday night listening to their music and seeing them like get really like tapped into EDM and like super engaged with everything and just like in their emotions made me want to like be able to do something like that myself, you know, be able to like get people tapped into their emotions and just move people in a way that like was meaningful with music.
Hmm. Okay. So, how did you initially teach yourself to produce music? What were some of your first steps? And what was the moment that made you like decide, yeah, I'm doing it now?
For me, I would say it was a lot of trial and error. Initially, like downloading a DAW, like one of the random free DAWs online, just over browser, and then going in and actually like getting a DAW to produce on my computer with, and then after that, just like slamming random sounds into it and just seeing what works. Like a lot of my stuff now, I wouldn't call it amazingly well produced, but there's definitely a lot more like method to the madness now than there was when I first started producing. Like whenever I was first producing, I wouldn't even put stuff on like the traditional beat grid that they have, like the 4-on-the-4 beat grid, because I didn't really understand how it worked. So I was just I was making stuff that was kind of like out of the beat grid key, and I would try to use it in my DJ sets, and it just would never work. So a lot of trial and error until I got the sounds that I wanted and was able to like adopt my own unique sound that I can put in my sets and people know that it's me, you know.
Okay. How long did it take you to pick that up to like produce music in that regards, as well as when did you start a DJing?
I probably didn't start producing until a year and a half after I initially started DJing, mostly because I didn't think I would be able to produce the kind of sound that I enjoyed listening to.
Hmm.
Um, so much as like I wanted to produce random stuff, but I also wanted it to be able to be something that I could use in a set. Now I understand that it's really as easy as how much effort I want to put into it. If I take the time to like sit down and produce stuff, I can make something that is gonna be a sound that I enjoy listening to and want to like play in a set. But that took like a year to however long it's gonna keep taking for me to like really nail it. Honestly, I still feel like I'm not where I want to be for any of the music that I produce.
Hmm. Okay. So when you first got into VR, did you expect yourself to be where you are, and how do you feel about your what you're doing now with music and DJing and then the virtual club scene?
Honestly, when I first got into VR, I was not a very creative person. I didn't do a lot of like artwork stuff. I wasn't interested in doing artwork stuff because I didn't want to like put in the time and effort. But the game gave me this wonderful way to express myself with my like physical being in the game. And later on with the VR chat scene, like being able to actually incorporate the hobby that I developed in my like personal life and be able to bring it into this game that I had already became accustomed to and I already had like creative flow in. um I would say this game like definitely led a lot of my like creative stuff that I do in my free time, from like 2D to 3D artwork to even like music production and stuff like that. Without VRChat, I wouldn't do any of this. I wouldn't have been like inspired to do any of this. So
Wow. So VR chats has a huge inspirational impact on you. That's quite impressive. Congratulations, by the way.
thank you. I would say this game is like you can get so much more out of it if you put a lot into it. This game kind of encourages you to like develop yourself creatively so you can actually develop yourself. You know, you can physically put yourself in this game in a way that you want to be able to be seen, and something like that is like super raw and powerful in a social platform where you get to engage with other people who are very much like-minded like that, and you just learn so much in such a short amount of time when you're driven to like really engage into it.
Hmm. Okay. What was the moment like in your earlier travels that kind of inspired you the most to start being creative?
I would say well for artwork stuff, definitely like getting into this game, and like the first group of people that I met, a lot of them were doing like avatar creation and stuff like that. And I was like, I would sit in Discord during the day, like whenever we weren't planning on getting on the game for the week. We usually didn't get on till like Friday, Saturday. So all throughout the week, we'd just be hanging in Discord, like not much to do except for like either remote work or some kind of like game or whatever. And people would be streaming like their Blender and stuff like that. And just seeing them be able to like sculpt and create themselves essentially was always really cool to watch, and I was like really interested in trying to learn how to do that myself. And I already had some background from college in like sculpting and doing animations and stuff like that, so it was only like a matter of time after being like pushed to do it to
Mm.
like really get into it.
Oh wow. So you don't have to tell me, but what is it you've went to college for?
Oh well, I'm actually still in college. I have another year left, but psychology with a minor in sociology and biology. And I had
Wow.
originally started for microbiology and then swapped to psychology a year back.
Oh wow. So you mentioned that you had experience with sculpting in college. May I ask where that came from? Because psychology and all everything like that doesn't seem like it. You would be sculpting.
Yeah. um So there was an artwork class that I took as an elective my freshman year that used AutoCAD and Maya, and we all got free subscriptions to Maya afterwards. Well, during the program and afterwards, we got to keep the subscriptions until we graduated college. So I had a semester course in sculpting that kind of gave me a little background knowledge for it, and then I had all the tools I needed after that because I had Maya, I had AutoCAD with experience on how to use it. Later on, I learned how to use Blender just because it's a bit easier to do the workflow from Blender to Unity when you're working with VRChat stuff. But
Oh,
yeah, that class definitely was like a Kickstarter for me.
oh wow. How long into VRChat did it take before you started like making your own creative stuff here, like avatars and stuff?
Um, I probably spent about a year in this game before I like really wanted to dive into it. I made a world originally, like 3 or 4 months into playing the game, but avatar work didn't come until a year in. And honestly, I still don't do a lot of stuff for myself. Most of the time, I do like work for other people. I'll do clothing as well. For this avatar, this is one that I picked up about like a year into playing the game, and now I just pretty much make clothing for it. I've gotten like used to using it over the past like 2 or 3 years, so it would
Oh,
feel weird to change at this point.
wow. So what initially made you want to choose that avatar and make assets for it?
I was already locked into like the whole kitsune aesthetic before I touched VRChat. I had played a few games and like already been super interested in like that kind of like Japanese aesthetic. So once I like found this avatar and I was like, this is like perfect, like something for me to start off with that's already like what I like and enjoy. I was like, this is what I'm gonna be using from now on.
Okay. So I'm gonna do a bit of a hard segue question because you did mention it earlier, and I wanted to touch upon it. You mentioned earlier you've done IRL sets as well as VR. Would
Yeah.
when did you start doing those, and how did you feel between your virtual sets and the ones you've played in real life?
I started DJing IRL back in late 2022, and then I kind of segued into VR stuff probably like 3 or 4 months after that, just from being introduced to people in the scene and then seeing people DJ in VR. And I was like, hold on, I could just do this from like my home whenever I want instead of having to wait for clubs to get back to me and stuff like that. But Um, that one was mainly just knowing people, already being interested in DJing and just showing up to clubs and like having a good time and talking to the people that ran them. And after that, things just kind of worked out. I've traveled for a few gigs. Most of the gigs that I have to play now, I have to at least drive 2 or 3 hours to go play at. Just because we don't really have much EDM stuff where I'm from.
Mm.
But I would say VR stuff feels a little bit more fun. In, in terms of the quality of sets that I DJ, I would say VR is like way above what I started off with initially IRL, just because I was like mainly sticking to like a few genres to pander to audiences IRL, like playing more house music or techno and stuff like that. In VR, I can definitely get way more creative with the sets. I can pretty much play whatever I want here, and there's always somebody that'll vibe with it, you know.
Hmm. Okay. So what what initially got you started DJing in real life to begin with, and what is the like real life club scene like now?
Um, I would say one of my friends that I actually met through this game got me into DJing IRL. He picked up a DJ deck and he would go like DJ at cons and stuff like that. He had like a little like harness, and with the DJ decks that I like to play off of the tractor ones, you can actually hook them up to phones. So he would basically have this little table on a harness and then hook his deck up to his phone and DJ off his phone, just walking around the con. And I would like watch him in Discord essentially while I'd practice and just go through music, and I was always really like fascinated with it. I initially started making like desktop sets just to like put on in the background when I come play in VR. We'd always like go to Hangout World or something and it'd be open video player. So I would make like an hour long playlist of our like favorite music and just toss that on, and that like got me hooked into like wanting to actually like pursue it a bit more, like go buy my own deck just so I have something to like actually play and practice with. And then IRL scene I would say is definitely a lot more closed off than VRChat is. The wonderful thing about VRChat is that there's so much club for people to like pursue, and it's all readily available for you. There's no like traveling or anything like that involved. There's no like hard gatekeeping, I would say. There's definitely some people that are kind of closed-minded when it comes to some kinds of music, mainly just because they're pursuing like a specific vibe for whatever club they're running, or maybe their community just doesn't like that kind of music, so they don't like to like push for it too often. But things are definitely a lot like close knit, or a lot more close knit than in the IRL scene. The IRL scene, there's traveling involved. If you want to get introduced into a club to be able to play there, you definitely have to be involved in it. Like you have to actually show up and talk to people. You can't just like email in a set or like DM somebody a set through a platform and expect them to be able to like listen to it in their free time, because 9 times out of 10 it just won't happen. You actually like have to like go up and be social and talk to people and hang out, and people, if you're not fitting the vibe, you know, and you're not like meeting that like metric that they expect for like people that go hang out there, you know, that like friendship status, you probably won't get booked, which is unfortunate. But there's always like other clubs that you can go to, which is nice. Even IRL, there's like way more of an opportunity for people to like host their own stuff and have a lot of people show up. Like VR, I mean, if you host your own thing, if you're not like in the social know, you might not get a great turnout for your events that you host. But IRL, I mean, especially if you're in an area that like doesn't normally have stuff, if you're just like letting people come in at the door, like charging a small fee, people probably show up.
Hmm. So I would like to ask another question, kind of relative similar on the subject. How is getting a gig in real life different or similar to getting a gig at a VR chat club?
I would say the similarity comes with being social, being able to like really like fit in with the people that you're trying to get booked by, like whether it be through like similar taste in music, or you just enjoy the vibe of whatever event they're run. Like being able to get over that like social barrier involved with just fitting in with some people is a must, whether it be IRL or in VR, because people don't want to have you around if you're not going to bring good energy to whatever area it is that they're like hosting their event. You know, they want somebody who is going to be like bringing in a good time. They want somebody who's going to make sure that things are like fun for the night. You know, they don't want somebody who is toxic or not, you know, like nice or just horrible to be around. Like VR and IRL always mirror that, you know, because it's a social platform, and here in IRL everything is social. It's about who you know. So like if you're social and you're likable and you have a good time and you want other people to have a good time, that is gonna do like miles for you. It doesn't matter where you go. I would say deferring stuff, VR, definitely it's a lot easier to like play a lot in here. I mean, if you like ask around a lot and you in a ton of discords when they post their like lineup stuff, like self-booking, like hey, here's the lineup for the night, if you want to take a slot, grab one. If you're in like a bunch of discords for that and you ask a lot, you could be playing literally every single night here for months on end. Like there, especially if you're good and you keep doing that, people will just start asking you without you having to like reach out, you know. When it comes to IRL stuff, you might be lucky to be playing like once a month if you like push for it, and you're not a big name DJ or some big name producer. Which playing once a month isn't the worst thing, like especially if you're getting paid for it. But you can definitely play a lot more in VR than you can IRL.
Okay. So what about from like you as a DJ perspective, like the feel when you're up on the front playing music for people? What are the similarities and the differences between the two, and like are there any differences in the DJs you'd see in both scenes?
As far as differences go, I would say there's definitely a difference in like level of skill between people for like real life events than in VR events, and it's nothing against them. It's just I think down to the amount of times we get to play in VR. There's way more practice involved with playing in front of a crowd and being able to like read a crowd and really figure out how your energy is flowing in a set and how you can like properly drive that, because there's no real way to get practice when DJing when it comes to being able to read a crowd without playing in front of other people. And that's probably like one of the most unfortunate skill gaps when it comes to that kind of stuff is crowd reading, you know? Like that's a big part of DJing. I think for me personally, half of it is performance related and half of it is like actually skill related. People, when they go see you perform, they want to see you perform too. They want to see you get into the music and be able to tell like if they're tired or if you're tired and you want to convey that in a set and like slow it down. All of that like plays a huge major factor. Me personally, whenever it comes to like VR and IRL events, there's always nervousness involved. I always get like super nervous before sets, and it's never really been a difference whether I'm playing in front of real people or anime girls in front of a DJ deck. So it's just like a thing for me playing in front of people. I would say it's a lot easier to crowd read IRL versus VR just because not everybody is going to be dancing in VR or like super engaged in the music. Some people might just be there to listen or they're there to hang out with friends and the music becomes a background thing, which isn't a bad thing. It's just there's a lot less like forced movement in VR than there is IRL. You know, like when you go to a venue IRL, there might not be places to sit. In VR, you can sit wherever you want because at the end of the day, you're still, you know, in your bedroom or your like playroom or whatever you have at your house.
Okay. So, is there any difference between the crowds in real life and VR, or just, like, at least from you look looking at the two and playing for the two different groups?
I would say there's way more like hard critiquing when it comes to music stuff in VR just because there's events every single week and a lot of people are on every single week going to those events and they might be able to, I don't know, like develop more of a taste for skillful mixing or stuff like that, so you definitely get critiqued a lot more in VR. I think IRL, especially if you're not like used to attending events, you're not really going to be like nitpicking a DJ's like skills when it comes to mixing, unless they're like really really new to it. You might just be like, oh, they had this one really cool track that I like to listen to, and that like sets the whole vibe for the set. That's all you're really gonna remember, which isn't like the worst thing, but I would say definitely the level of quality that people expect in the music is definitely a little bit more up in VRchat. At least for some events. Like I know there's like open decks and stuff like that. People aren't gonna care too much if you're like not mixing as wonderful or you're like really slow with what songs you play or just letting stuff play out and just enjoying yourself. Not everybody's gonna like get uptight about that, but I do notice it a lot more in here, you know.
Okay. That's actually quite an interesting point that honestly I wouldn't expect, to be honest. What about from like the club owner's perspective, like in real life, do they know you play in VR chat? And if so, what are like their general thoughts about that?
So this has happened quite a few times now where I've actually started using my VR like Twitter space and my Instagram Twitter space combined with my IRL stuff. Originally it was separate, but my IRL DJ account was actually hacked like 6, 7 months ago, and I ended up losing all of the following for that. So I pretty much just decided to combine it with my VR stuff and see how it goes from there. And since I've been doing that, I'll go play for an IRL event or something, and they'll ask for me to provide my like links for stuff like Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook or whatever, and I'll send it to them and they might like sift through it, and it's always interesting stuff popping up from that, whether it be like VR stuff or just like some of my more like shitposty stuff that I like to do on Twitter. But VR is always the eyebrow raising ones because they'll like sift through the posters and they're like, who are these people? Or they'll like ask questions about like pictures that are uploaded and stuff like that. And I'll kind of explain it to them, and it's usually a 50-50. 50% of the time they're like super interested and they're like they want to hear more about it, and then the other 50% of the time they think it's just kind of like weird or they might not be as
Mm.
interested in it.
Okay. Has like you combining the two spaces from your real life and VR, have you found it to be easier or harder to like get real life sets with your VR chat activities that much in the face?
For some of my bookings where I'm required to send in sets, like I might be applying to DJ for some event or whatever, or like a a con or something, if I have to send in a DJ set, having like the readily available sets from what I've played in VR, just like recordings and stuff like that, that I can send in is always nice. Especially since I have a habit of like getting on like late on like a weeknight or something and just playing a pop-up, and I might get lucky and it's like a really good set, or it might just be a horrible one and I'll delete the recording. But usually the really good ones I save for stuff like that and I'll like send them off. So that always helps because, you know, like whenever I'm sitting at home, I don't always want to like sit down and record an hour-long set just for like shits and giggles to like send off to someone. I'd rather, if I'm gonna play, it be in front of like at least a few people so I can gauge how the audience would react to whatever I'm playing normally. Even if I'm like sitting in Discord and like just streaming the DJ set, I still want to like hear some kind of like feedback on it while I'm playing, so I understand if I'm like bringing in proper energy, or if I'm like being too much, or if I need to slow down. It lets me like gauge a little bit better what I'm doing. Um, I would say it is nice to be able to tell people that I play in VR sometimes, just so like I can kind of get the conversation going and maybe get them interested in it, because I want to see more like gaps being bridged between VR and IRL stuff, especially in the past like a year or two, seeing stuff like 2DCon and Shelter and Tube and VR IRL doing the like the post or the not the posters, the portal events where they'll have like a portal between a VR world and whatever IRL venue is going on. Stuff like that I find super neat, and I'm really interested to see that become more solid and like see more stuff like that happening, because that's such a wonderful way for DJs in here to be able to showcase themselves IRL and possibly land bookings or interest that way. It's just another way for us to like grow our like space essentially.
That's actually a very interesting point. I do hope to see that as well. When you like mention VR chat or have to like have that conversation to sit down, like this is what the VR chat scene is like. What is the general census from like the people you're talking to, and do any of them actually come into VR chat after talking with you?
I've brought some people that I've met through IRL stuff into VR, and they're usually, whenever I'm bringing them into VR stuff, they're already interested in it because I've shown them videos or like performances from VR events, and they're like, "This is super cool. There's fancy lights and all these like wonderful like vibrant shaders and stuff like that happening." Like they're just like, "This would be so much fun to like actually be in." And some of them even already played VR chat and just didn't know anything about the VR scene. So like as soon as I mentioned it, they're like, "Hold on, I had no idea that was a thing. I gotta check this out." Sometimes though, usually it's like like a huge level of disinterest, and they just don't want anything to do with it, or they might like it might be one of those things where like, "Oh, that's cool," and then they're quickly trying to change the subject. But for the most part, there's usually a level of interest that they like want to like learn about it, and maybe not like want to come check it out in the immediate future, but definitely want to hear about it, you know? Or they
Okay.
might like be interested in like what's going on in it. I've
Hmm.
had a few people like get back to me about like checking out VR stuff for some more like specific events like Shelter and stuff like that, because they'll see certain artists that they've listened to like on the regular like playing in VR, and they're like, "This is a wonderful opportunity for me to see that artist without having to pay a lot of money or leave the comfort of my bedroom or
Hmm.
house," you know?
Hmm. You know, I'm actually glad to hear that there's that sort of interest in VR chat events coming from the real world. It honestly brings me a little hope seeing a lot more people come in here and experience this wonderful place you and I both call, I don't say home, but a second home maybe.
Yeah, definitely spend a lot of time in here.
Hmm.
At least nowadays, yeah.
Okay. What have like did you ever guide any of the people you've pulled into VR chat, like held their hand and pulled them through to events, and what were their experiences like from what you saw?
I've guided a few people to different events and stuff like that, and sometimes it's a 50-50. Sometimes they get really interested in the scene, and suddenly they're on more than I am, and they're hopping to like 7 different events every single night, and it's suddenly like a Wednesday morning and they're on at like 3 a.m. dancing at some random pop-up, and I'm like, all right, cool. They've like super ingrained themselves into the scene. And then I've had a few friends that are just like not really interested in the rave scene, but they're super interested in the social aspect of VR. So they develop friends in the rave scene, or they kind of go on their own path and they check out like public lobbies and different worlds and stuff like that, and develop friendships and more like
Mm.
social aspect stuff. Like they're definitely still here, but not, they don't want to really be a part of this, you know?
Okay. So, as another question for you, similar but also a little different, what has the VR chat scene provided you in terms of what you're doing, like in music or DJing? Like, how has it helped you, or has it brought you any peace of any sort?
I would say it's given me a much larger platform for me to showcase what I would like to provide to other people as far as entertainment goes. I suddenly have this social platform that I can use to like post whatever's on my mind and people are interested. I can share my music in this game, and there's tons of people that have like messaged me out of interest because they enjoy that, and that's something that I didn't really get to experience before I got in this game because I wasn't even interested in producing. I would say overall, just being able to be inspired by what's going on in here, and so many wonderful talents as well that also produce or provide some kind of entertainment in this game. It's a huge motivator for me to like push myself more, and I guess I feel more rewarded at being able to be on the same platform as a lot of these people and be able to like push my stuff out in the same way that they can.
Mm.
And it's way more rewarding to look at it that way, because I'm thinking these people are wonderful and I get to stand right next to them and do the same stuff that they're doing. So maybe I'm doing something right, you know?
Hmm. Well, I'm glad you're able to find that level of peace, interest, and the few times I can't do English, today is the day. But I'm glad you're able to get something out of it, and yeah. How I did another question is, how often do you play shows here in VR chat versus real life? Hello, just real quick, I'll only take a few seconds of your time. In the description that way you have a card, Metaversedegen to card.co. We have many links down there for you to come check out. We have an X link, which is with me. We have a Discord where we hang out and do stuff all the time, as well as a Patreon link, where if you wish to support us, you can. Where there's also a show and another podcast separate from Metaverse Degen, which we have available to our wonderful members who signed up, such as Niche, Training Fangs, Aliquum, and Forbidden Zero. Thank you all. You're all amazing. Enjoy the rest of your video. I won't take up any of your time.
Ooh, this has been like the subject of controversy between my friend group. So for a while, I was playing every single night. Literally, like when I started playing in the scene, I was already on break from school, and I work evenings most of the time, so I'm off by like 9 o'clock every single night. And the first thing I'd do when I'd get home would be like eat, shower, get on VR chat, and then stay on till whatever like obnoxious time in the morning, either like hanging out at events or DJing, and that ended up me playing like every single night for like 2 or 3 months straight. Now things have kind of slowed down. Usually only playing Mondays and Fridays, sometimes Saturdays, depending on what things are going on. I help run events for another club now, and usually I try to like keep my Saturdays open because of that. But Mondays and Fridays, usually I'll try to like get booked somewhere, or I might message a friend and be like, "Hey, are you running something?" Or other people will reach out to me and they'll ask if I want to go play for whatever events they're doing. I'd say right now it's usually like 2 to 3 times a week.
Oh, wow. I'm going to be honest, that's quite impressive, even for just 2 or 3 days a week. From what I've heard, there are a lot of people, at least in the IRL, who can't get shows like that due to travel times or maybe people interest. Uh, or yeah.
Yeah, I would say IRL stuff usually is a lot slower, but there's a lot less stuff going on. That
Mm.
like I was saying earlier, like there's way more like close knitness involved in VR chat because all of the events are readily accessible. So it's way easier to get shows in VR chat, like or just being able to like have the opportunity to play like at the end of the show, even just because there's a lot of stuff going on every single night, and there's always a lot of people that are interested in like hanging out or checking out whoever's playing. So if you want to play in front of a crowd and you really want to do that night, it's probably likely that you could just by going ask somebody, you know. IRL, you might there might only be like 2 or 3 clubs in your area and like 30 DJs, so you gotta be on the waiting list and kind of sit out and wait your turn.
Hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just there's much less clubs like readily available for you to play at, especially if there aren't things in your area, because then you'll have to travel for it, and that can be a huge factor as well.
Okay.
IRL, I'd say I probably only play like once a month if I'm lucky. I've skipped a few months during school as well, just because I don't have the time to like go travel to Texas, like a 3 or 4 hour drive from where I live, to go play for like one night and then come back and work the next day and then school the day after. You know, it's a little too much.
Mm, I can understand. Another weird question I have, since you do both. In the audience that's listening to your music and sets, how often does someone from the audience, either via IRL, will like reach out or follow you or begin listening to your music after hearing you?
It kind of depends. For VR stuff, where I'm playing at, if I've already played at a club, it's less likely to happen. But I've noticed a few times when I go play at a club for the first time, I'll recognize names from whenever I was like hanging out there that they'll like pop up on my feed on like SoundCloud or Twitter or something, just a follow or something, and that always feels really good. It feels really rewarding because it's someone that enjoyed my stuff enough that they're like interested in seeing what I'm playing in the future. IRL, I've had a few people come up to me after I played sets at different places that'll just kind of like ask me about like what I'm doing over like the next couple months, like where I plan on playing at, or they'll ask me about like my music or like what's my socials and stuff like that. And that always feels really rewarding as well. Like especially when someone will come up to you and they'll ask you about like whatever song you played at a set time, and then you're sitting there and you realize, wait, hold on, that was a song that I made. You know, that feels really really good. Especially when it's another like DJ, because that's someone who's listened to a lot of music and they've decided that the music that you made is quality enough for them to want to play in a set as well. You know,
Oh, wow.
that right there is like a big stamp of approval for me whenever I'm like working on music and stuff like that.
Hmm. What was the first moment that happened to you, like either real life or VR? How did you feel about it?
VR, I play a lot more of my own music now whenever I can. IRL, I don't typically do it just because I make some weirder stuff compared to what I'm usually mixing. But one of the times, actually, I met one of my best friends that lives in the same city as me. She had been playing for probably like 4 or 5 years before I started, and I went play at the same event that she was at for one of their open decks things, and I spun one of my songs, and she was asking about it. She's like, "Who produced this? I've never heard this before. It was really cool. It was a techno track," and I was like, "Actually, I made this." And after that, we sort of became pretty good friends over the next couple months, just because we were super interested in like techno, and we wanted to make the same kind of stuff. That felt really rewarding, being able to make that like social connection with somebody else who was like super interested in something that I made, that I didn't at the time really feel like I did an amazing job on. I felt like even after like making the track, I was thinking like, damn, I could have done better here. I could have worked on this a little bit more, like tweaked this at the end a little bit better. VR, more of my recent sets, I've started playing some of my own stuff. Actually, at the Nurtured 3 event that Naku ran a couple weeks back, I played one of my tracks, like fully played it out, and it seemed like people were really enjoying it. That definitely felt really good. Especially being able to like double it with another track and then like really play around with it, like getting really creative with it. That felt really really good to see people enjoying themselves.
Hmm. Now, when you started producing your own music, did you expect that level of interest from it? And how did you feel after seeing people are enjoying your work?
I would say when I started making music, it was originally intended for my own listening pleasure, I suppose, like stuff that I could just kind of like listen to in my own time and be like, haha, I made that, you know?
Hmm.
I never really expected to have people like reaching out to me about like stuff that I'll upload or put out on my Spotify, and they'll check it out and they're like, "Hey, this was really good." Like that definitely feels super rewarding now. It makes me want to like actually continue working on music when whenever I like first started, I didn't really get that feeling as much because I wasn't sharing my stuff, and I didn't really like think that I had the ability to do that so much as I do now. Whenever I first started making music, it was like I didn't think people would be interested in anything I put out. Now it's definitely changed.
Hmm. Well, so far after hearing everything you've shared with us, it sounds like you're up to so much stuff. How do you do time management between college and VR chat and IRL shows? And I assume if you work, how do you do it all?
Honestly, I don't. I'm like flying by the seat of my pants, and I'm constantly having to like really micromanage my schedule last minute. But keeping a calendar and making like planners every single week so I can like be in touch with whatever I gotta work on. Basically, going through and setting every single hour of the day what I should be doing.
Hmm.
Especially since I have like a hard time keeping track of like stuff that I really need to be on the ball for. Having that like planner or whatever like schedule written down is always super helpful. But at the same time, it's also kind of like bad for me because I get super in the habit of wanting to have that set schedule, and when something kind of like flip flops and I can't work around it, it makes it way harder for me to like bounce back from compared to just
Hmm.
like being super spontaneous and not having to worry about any of that.
Hmm. How do you handle those mishaps or pull yourself out if you're feeling very tired from doing it all? How do you pull yourself out of the funk?
Sometimes a lot of it is just coming down to taking like me time, like figuring out what days I can like actually sit down and relax and not focus on anything, just let things happen and see where it goes. For having to like back out of events or maybe like miss something in my schedule because I didn't plan properly. Um, Sometimes it's just a reminder of like how serious it actually is. So like let's say I might have like a pop-up planned like a week or two out, and suddenly I have to cancel because work decided that I have to stay earlier for whatever, or go in later, or like work on something outside of like my usual time. And I'll just remind myself, hey, like this event is happening 2 weeks from now. I'm sure they can find somebody else, and I would love to play for them in the future, but if I can't now, it's not a big issue. For IRL events, I definitely get a little bit more peeved with having to back out of stuff just because it might be like a month or two before I can play for them again, or like even get another set somewhere else. I'll definitely like try to work around those a lot more. But for VR stuff, if something happens IRL that I have to like prioritize, I definitely don't like stress over prioritizing it. I try to remember like this is for fun, this is an opportunity for me to showcase myself again, and as long as I'm like being respectful about it and letting them know way in advance like what's the deal, what's happening, what I need to do for my schedule to be able to like play for them, or if I do have to back out, as long as I'm being respectful and letting them know about it earlier, it's not a big issue.
Okay. Well, that's actually really good to know that you've developed that method and you're capable of even pulling yourself out. I know some people I've known in real life as well as VR who fell into one of those funks and they just can't get out of it. So I'm very happy you found
Yeah.
some method. Hmm. So,
I will say like personal stuff does play into wanting to DJ sometimes for me, where I've had
mm,
like issues of pulling myself out of funks, like whether it be like something going on in my personal life that might just be having me in a down mood. I definitely feel a lot less motivated to do stuff, and I have had to like back out of stuff just because I know like
mm,
I can't perform that day, like I just wouldn't be able to put on the kind of show that I want.
I can understand that. What kinds of things has VR taught you with what you do in real life, and how has VR been the it sounds like a VR chat for you is a really great tool at like perfecting your craft.
VRchat has kind of given me a lot of instruction on how to behave socially when it
Mm,
comes to making new friends and like really putting myself out there. Just because I have a lot of opportunity to practice in here with the like my like true self, because obviously like most people don't always be themselves. They don't always try to be themselves in social settings. They might try to front or like have this version of themselves that they feel way more inspired to be. But VR is like, it's very raw, it's very open. People are allowed to be themselves here and they're encouraged to. So you have way more opportunity to practice doing that in a way that it won't harm your your social life in your circles, you know, because there's so many circles that if you don't fit in, you can go to the next one and try again, you know. IRL, there's not much opportunity to do that in a way that won't harm you sometimes, just because you might be locked into whatever like social circles in your area, whether that be like your friend groups at work, or you're in college and you have certain friend groups at college that you try to make friends with, you know, or like even like clubs or stuff like that, if you're not in either, where you're like, this is where you go hang out in your afternoon, so like these are the people that you're constantly interacting with, so you have to kind of maintain that like level of social conduct that might not be the one you prefer.
Hmm. Wow. You know, I've heard very similar stories to people like becoming more of a sociable person because of a VR chat. Like one of our close friends has a similar story. She started off as a mute, um, and wouldn't speak, and to some degree couldn't speak, but she ended up getting medical surgery so she could speak again. But she was so shy and wouldn't, because she was afraid people wouldn't like. And over time, she was capable of having confidence self to do that. And I've heard a lot of stories similar to yours and hers as well. I'm glad there's like VRChat has that kind of power to pull people out of whatever hole they find themselves in.
Yeah, I mean, this is a free platform for you to test out being whoever you want. And I mean, if you choose to make that free platform to be whoever you want, a creative profile for yourself or some kind of personality that's not natural for you, then that's up to you. But if you choose to make this platform the area where you kind of test out being yourself in a way that's very constructive and like super easy to learn from, you're basically just like helping yourself in such a positive way. Like there's so many benefits to learning how to do that, like properly be yourself in front of other people and enjoy just being yourself. It's incredibly beneficial to like every aspect of your health, I think.
Hmm. What was one of those moments for you that helped you become more of a social person or felt more comfortable being yourself?
For this game, probably this avatar, actually, like finding an image for myself that I could like convey my aesthetic in a way that was like very me,
Hmm.
versus just like having some random avatar and like an e-boy avatar or something in a random world, or like a I originally was playing with a Yukon model that I found in some random avatar world, and I used that for like a year or two, just hopping around in desktop mode. And then shortly before finding this one, I was in VR using the Yukon, and I didn't really want to like be too social, I guess, whenever I was using that avatar, just because I didn't really like, it wasn't me, you know. It was like a super short avatar that was like super like childish, silly kind of aesthetic, and it just didn't fit me. But now, like being in something that I feel like represents myself a bit more, just in like the aesthetic for it, I feel a lot more comfortable with like talking to people and being more like expressive with how I like use my body language. I move a lot more. I use my hands when I talk. I move around a lot while I'm talking as well, whether it be like gestures or like moving my ears around, stuff like that, you know.
Hmm.
Being able
Okay.
to convey more of myself in a conversation so people feel more engaged.
Hmm. What about the avatar helps you do that, may I ask? Because I know in VR chat there are a couple different kinds of people. They either avatar hop or they kind of don't stay in one, but those who stay in one usually have like some reason why they prefer being in it. Helps. I'm just curious, what about this avatar is your reason for using it?
I would say for me the aesthetic, and then how I've like narrowed down being able to just make outfits whenever I want. So I can kind of like put what I find more comfortable on this avatar now. Definitely the aesthetic though, for me. Like I don't really like would be the word. I don't like convey this body type at all. This isn't me. This isn't like how I am IRL. I'm a 6'4" dude, and I'm fairly like more built than this. So that's it's not like anything like that. But the aesthetic definitely, like the energy of the avatar, I definitely feel a lot more like bubbly. I'm super energetic. I'm like a goofy person as well. I like to like joke and be like silly all the time, and I feel like the avatar fits that a lot more.
Hmm. How how long did it take you before you felt comfortable with that avatar in terms of finding it and before you kind of settled into it?
Funny enough, I've heard this a few times from other people when it comes to especially like male people or more like masculine people. When it comes to like getting avatars in VR, when they first start, they want like a male avatar. They want like an e-boy or something just because it's a dude and they don't feel comfortable running around as a girl or whatever. I was kind of the same way when I got in this game. I just kind of like picked the first e-boy avatar I found and then used that for a while, and then once I got a headset, I had already found like a Yukon model that I thought would be fun to run around in just because it was like short. It had a little fancy VRC lens camera on it, so I could take photos. And um, after using that one, I guess I didn't really think about like being in a female body as much anymore. It wasn't like an issue or anything like that, and I didn't feel like weird about it. By the time I was on this one, it was like a non-issue. I didn't even really like think about it. I was just like, oh, cool, Kitsune avatar with like pretty colors all over and a mask that you can like turn off and on. I was like, this is perfect, you know.
Hmm. You know, I have seen a lot of like VRChat avatars that most people use tend to be more feminine a lot of the time. And I, why do you think that may be?
Ooh, that can be a wide topic, and I've heard a lot of opinions on it. I
Mm,
think for me, it's just it comes down to like kitsunes being way more like feminine presenting. There aren't
mm,
like even like a male kitsune and like a Japanese like artwork and stuff like that is way more feminine leaning, like a very like twinkish body type where it's like super thin, like less muscly person, maybe a bit shorter,
mm,
like girly hair, like super long hair, stuff like that. I guess would be the reason why I think this fits more as a girl than a guy, because I'm sure I could easily like make a kitsune male avatar, and I've made a few that I used for maybe like a week and then don't ever touch again.
mm,
For some other people that I've talked to about it, like some of my friends that are a bit more like feminine leaning in the way that they act and feel, they kind of just prefer the female body type because it fits way more in line with that. Um, I've had a few friends that are the opposite. They're more masculine and they just prefer like the male body type, and they're like super grossed out by being in a female avatar. But that's honestly like the usual stuff that I hear.
okay.
I've heard like a lot of different things, but those are like the most common ones. But for everyone, it seems like it's always something like different. Even if it's similar, it's usually something different.
Okay. Well, I very much appreciate you sharing your insight. So thank you for that. I wasn't trying to put you in a weird spot. It's like, which avatar is better? Blah blah. I wasn't trying to put you in that kind of position.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, I tend to have a very curious mindset, sometimes walking face first into things I shouldn't. Oops. Well, yeah. What about the VR chat rave scene pulls you to it so frequently? The song after.
I would say at the moment, I guess because I've been in here so long and I've made so many friendships, definitely like the ability to just get home late at night after I work all like afternoon into like the late night time, and having a place that I can like go enjoy music and be able to share my creativity is like what's constantly pulling me back in. Sorry.
Hmm.
I think when I first started, it was definitely just like the super like interest that I had in it, like that super like hyper focused sensation of just being introduced to something new and being able to explore it. And now it's very much like a refined interest of just being able to enjoy music. It'll probably still be that for like a long time. I don't see the scene going anywhere, and I mean I have so much fun in here just being able to like be myself and enjoy music with friends and hang out and have a good time. I don't see any reason to not be here.
Hmm. Okay. So another question for you as well. I'm sorry I tend to whiplash around, so if I go too much, please let me know.
Oh, you're fine.
Um, what does your setup look like for DJing and making music? Like, what kind of equipment do you use?
Most of my equipment for making music is digital at the moment. A lot of digital, like VSTs and stuff like that, and plugins, and then of course, like the DAW. I produce on FL Studio, so I
Hmm.
have a lot of like options for plugins and stuff that I can use in it. I have a couple pieces of hardware that I use. I have a MIDI keyboard that I mess around with on occasion, and usually I'll make my leads with that and stuff like if I'm making like any kind of keyboard progression with bass or like some kind of like synth lead, I'll typically use that. I have a synthesizer as well. I have a Artaria Brute analog synthesizer that I use for well, I guess a lot of my sound now. I just recently started using it way more now that I like understand how to use it a lot better. But for a lot of music production, it's all digital. That usually plays into EDM, which is why it's so wonderful. Is there's so many like digital ways to produce that you don't have to physically go out and buy a lot of expensive equipment for. I know some people prefer to like produce way more on hardware than to do software, and some people prefer software more than they do hardware. Like I have a friend who he produces on a piece of equipment that has quite literally everything built into it. You never have to touch a computer for any of it until you're like ready to upload whatever song you're putting out. But
Hmm.
other than that, you can basically make a song from beginning to end just off of that piece of equipment. As far as DJing goes, I'm currently set up with the Tractor S4. I'm working on trying to get some more equipment for it, but at the moment it's just the S4 and then 2 launch pads that I occasionally use for sets while I'm playing. I'll like run samples and stuff over the music live, or I'll do like drum patterns and stuff like that. I find Tractor is probably the best software that I've used so far for stuff like that, just because it's way more compatible with other software. I tried using Serato and Rekordbox, and they just didn't have the level of like compatibility with other programs like Ableton Live that I needed to be able to do what I wanted to do.
Okay. Well, I have two last questions before we wrap up. One is, where did you get the name you
Mhm.
use, KitsuneMixes, and what inspired it?
So my original username was like a play on like the kitsune aesthetic. It was a reference to the fox mask the that's usually like associated with these. Let me see if I there we go,
Ah.
like this.
Mhm.
And I got into the VR scene and I wanted something a bit more like music related instead. So I kind of just drew up like KitsuneMixes because it kind of rolled off the tongue, and that's pretty much became standard for all of my VR stuff now. And I'm starting to use it a bit more for IRL sets, which has became kind of confusing because people will try to search up my music stuff afterwards and then they just can't find anything, or they find the VR stuff first. That's under KitsuneMixes, whereas all of my like music stuff is produced under Tadashi Eto, which is my like artist name.
Hmm.
So like I'm trying to figure out like a proper way to bridge those two, but at the moment KitsuneMixes was just something that I like came up with as like a play on words that rolled off the tongue and fit the aesthetic. It wasn't anything like too crazy involved.
Okay. And if anyone wishes to do what you do, what kind of advice would you give them starting out?
I would I would say the best thing you can do is ask as many questions as possible and just kind of engulf yourself in the culture of music. Like really dive into what you were already listening to. Think about it a lot more. Like if you were for me listening to a lot of like EDM before I ever touched like a DJ deck or DJ software, and like there was a lot of stuff I didn't know what EDM or that was EDM that I listened to that I didn't even know about because I didn't really understand what EDM was at the time, that now I definitely like have a greater appreciation for, because it was like very much the realization that this was my introduction to it and I just didn't know it yet. So like really engulf yourself in what you're already doing and just dive further into the music and really appreciate it and have a good time, because that's really all it comes down to. You're here as entertainment. So at the end of the day, if you like seeing people have a good time and you like having a good time, so much is gonna come from it, you know.
Mm.
Like this can only grow. The ceiling is like way up here, and you start down way here, so
Okay.
you know.
Well, again, KitsuneMixes, thanks you for sharing everything from what you do in real life, how did you guys started with music, and the differences between the two. So thank you for your time. It was greatly appreciated.
Yeah, no problem.
So where can the audience find you if they wish to reach out?
Well, I'm on here all the time under the name KitsuneMixes. You can catch me on Discord under the same name, and of course on all of my socials: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, which I don't use very often. You can either find me under Tadashi Eto or KitsuneMixes. I kind of just use the two interchangeably because most platforms offer the ability to have two names. So either one of those you can find me. On YouTube especially, if you've heard me play before and you really want to go listen to one of my sets again, I upload most of my sets on YouTube under the name KitsuneMixes, so that's a easy way to like check out my stuff.
Okay. Well, all of that will be in the Hoobly What's It right down that way. And I'll do the thing since there is no little tiny furball to do it. And I feel like asking a question of you. Who has inspired you in this life or world, either VR chat or real life? It doesn't matter. Let us know down below. See you in the metaverse, folks.